Okay, good morning, everyone. Dan Bates, President and CEO, Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and we're glad you could join us this morning for coffee and conversation. This morning, we're going to be learning about crisis communications planning. So stay tuned. I think it's going to be a really valuable and interesting topic. It's not, if something happens, it's that when it happens, so you know what to do. So we'll be getting into that in just a little bit, and I'll let the speaker introduce themselves when they're ready. This is a Zoom conversation, so I'm sure the speakers won't mind if you interrupt them if you have questions along the way. We are also on Facebook Live, which is usually our larger audience. If you're on Facebook Live and you have a question that needs to be answered, you type it in, and Laura will get that answered for you. And this will also be on our YouTube channel afterwards. So if you want to refer to something or share it with somebody in the future, you can do that. So you know who I am, you know what the protocol is. Now we're going to turn it over to Tiffany to do self-introductions.
Hi, I'm Tiffany, Director of Marketing at the Greater Hamilton Chamber. I'm going to go just around my screen, so I'll call your name. Let us know who you are and what company you're with. And we'll start with Tammy H.
Hi, I am Tammy. I'm with Vehr Communications. I have been there about 4 years, but very connected to the Hamilton community as well. I'm on the board of Hamilton Pride, and I'm the board president for Great Miami Rowing Center. So it's good to see everybody this morning.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Annette.
Morning. I'm Annette Landisman. I work at SELF. We're the nonprofit community action agency serving Butler County.
Trevor.
Hi, I'm Trevor Ryder with In the Groove Cleaning Services. I lived in Hamilton for about 10 years.
Okay. Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Keitel with Keitel Business Coaching. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning. Mike.
Mike Lockhart. I'm a regional vice president with Primerica. Been in the financial world 28 years and moved back to the Hamilton area 6 years ago and opened an office here.
Lisa.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Deaton with LD Images Photography. We have and this is Jim Weibel, my husband. We have a home studio in Fairfield Township, Ohio, specializing in high school seniors, families, and business branding and headshots.
Great. Deanna.
I'm Dee Cosina with ADG Painting Services. We're a commercial and residential painting service.
Gina.
Hey guys, I'm Gina Ferraro with Land of Illusion. We are open. We have got 6 attractions and a brand new one this year for you to check out. It's called Lights Out. We literally are turning the lights out and you have to feel your way through. It's beautiful weather and we're just loving it. So come out. We're open Friday and Saturdays. Get your tickets at landofillusion.com. I hope to see you there this Friday.
Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Moats. I'm the marketing manager at the Fitness Center for Creative Arts here in Hamilton, Ohio.
Laura.
Hello, everyone. Laura Merrill with the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
And I think that's everyone. Jason.
Hey everyone, Jason Michael Miller, Director of Membership and Engagement for the Greater Hamilton Chamber. So, Nick, what you can do is you can share your screen, and whenever you're ready to start the presentation, you can do that. As Dan said, you can make it interactive and kind of hold questions in between each slide, or if you'd like to hold all questions at the end, you can do that as well.
I just sent a message to whomever to share this to make it okay so I can share the screen. But good morning, everybody. Wonderful to see you. I'm excited about this presentation. Actually, Tammy and I are going to share and do it together. So let me try to share the screen again. There we go. Thank you, whoever fixed that. Okay.
I can see it.
Are we all good, folks?
Yeah.
Yep, Nick, can you put it in presentation?
Yep. Thank you, Tam.
Yep.
All right, so there we go. Oops. Okay, good. We all good, everyone?
Yep.
Coffee and conversations. We're happy. Jason, thank you for the invitation to share this with your members this morning. We're going to walk through this, and one of the challenging things about Zoom presentations is it's sometimes hard to read the room and see if people have questions or anything like that. So anybody, we welcome questions throughout this. If that question happens to be on the next slide, we'll be very nice and gentle and say, "Oh, yeah, we're just coming up to that one." But it's more fun for us when we're kind of seeing some feedback or getting some feedback or getting questions. It helps us in the presentation. So here we go. So what we're going to discuss today is this crisis communications or issues management. We're going to tell you just a tiny bit about us. We're going to talk about what actually is a crisis. We're going to talk about being prepared and what you can do to be prepared. We're going to encourage everyone to not make it worse because sometimes energy, excitement in a top moment could result in you making the crisis even worse just because you're feeling you have to do something, and whatever it is, let's just do something. We're all kind of, as business owners, we're all kind of built that way, and sometimes it takes a little discipline and a little knowledge to not make it worse. And then we end this with where we begin. This is not if something happens to disrupt your business, it's a matter of when. And all those things that keep you up at night as business owners or business operators. This is a way to deal with those or to address those if they present themselves in your company. So just a little bit about us, and obviously this is not a pitch, but this is to give you a little background so that you understand where we come from in what we do. So we were founded in 2007 as an integrated communications agency, and we have evolved over those 18 years. We're now one of the region's leading firms in dealing with crisis and issues management. And when we talk about what we do, this integrated strategic communications, the language that we've put it into to describe who we are and what we do is think, create, engage. Think is brand strategy, create is brand content, and engage is brand communications. And you can see underneath all of those on your screen what those really mean. But through that integration, you can think of us as marketing, public relations, advertising, social and digital, anything that really falls under that bucket. We do it with our team members, and we have some preferred contractors with whom we work that we would gladly recommend or collaborate with on behalf of partners. Just a little bit about the two of us. I founded this back in 2007, and have done a whole bunch of different things, and am excited to be here today with all of you. Hey, Tammy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So like I said a little bit earlier, I am really connected to the Hamilton community. I don't live in Hamilton. I'm just up the road in Liberty Township a little bit, but I've been at Vehr for about 4 years. Prior to that, I was managing brand reputation, creative services at Cincinnati Children's, but I have a long history in crisis communications management. So again, I'm really excited to talk to everybody today. So thank you all for joining.
I want to mention, click the slide. We are a member of an organization called IPREX. IPREX is a global entity, about 100 plus independent, mostly small to mid-size. There's some really large agencies, but mostly agencies around our size. Small to independent, small to mid-size agencies from around the world. This is our kind of secret weapon to compete with the big multinational agencies. So we often work with any number of members that are in what we call the Americas region. So North, Central, and South America, the vast majority of those are in North America, and the vast majority of those are in the United States. In the EMEA region, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, the vast majority of those members are in Western Europe. And APAC, the Asian Pacific region of the world, 8 or 10 agencies throughout Singapore, Japan, China, and other areas in the Asian Pacific region. It's about 100 agencies. We have access to about 1,100 professionals. What it really provides us access to is experience and very specific knowledge. Sometimes we use this for crisis situations or crisis planning. For example, if we had a chemical processing company, we might reach out to a Houston, Texas agency that also does work for chemical processing companies, and they might sit second seat with us to work on that. But that's how it works, and happy to share more if anybody has questions about that. Here's our leadership team. I've already introduced myself as the founder. Laura Phillips is our president. Stacy Delk is vice president. Karen Bells is our director of executive communications, and Tammy already introduced herself as a senior communications strategist. And so that's our team coming at you. Now going to turn it over to Tammy to talk a little bit about what is a crisis.
Sure. So, yeah, let's get into it. What you're here for. So, what is a crisis? Really, it is any unplanned business disruption that typically has the potential to threaten your brand reputation. And I know we talked about this earlier, but I can't stress enough that it really is important to be prepared, because it's not if it will happen, it really is a when it will happen. And I think a lot of the companies that we work with have kind of kicked that can down the road, thinking like, I mean, we're a small company, or we're a nonprofit, or, it just won't happen to us. It happens to small companies, large companies, nonprofits, for profits. So really, it will happen at some point in time. But there are a few different types of crises. So there's the sudden, really, it's unpredictable. It's not something that you've been keeping an eye on. It's a natural disaster. It's a death on a job site, or a serious workplace accident. But then there are the smoldering crises. So something that's kind of been under the radar to a lot of people, but you've been dealing with it a little bit at a time, and at some point that's going to bubble up. Very likely it'll bubble up, and it'll become, an actual full-fledged crisis. And then there are some that are really a product of our own making. It's called a response fueled crisis. It's really the people involved. It's either your action or your inaction that create the actual crisis, that become the actual crisis. So, and it could be in reaction to either a sudden or a smoldering crisis event, but sometimes your response becomes the actual crisis, and that's what people focus on instead.
Hey, Tammy, let's stick on this page just for a
Yeah.
second. Just this, it was just the weekend before. We got a call on a Thursday or Friday, so now a week and a half ago. A partnership company. I'm not going to name the company or even the industry, but a partnership was dissolving. One partner had made the other partners aware that he or she wanted out, and that began a negotiation process, because it's complicated. It's a partnership; everybody's sharing in revenue, and it was one of the founding partners, and this is kind of in that smoldering, pesky issue category. they began negotiating with the guy, and it ended up being the lawyers negotiating with the lawyers. And the guy just got teed off and said, "This is taking too long. Forget it. I'm going to file a lawsuit against you guys." And he filed a lawsuit. Well, surprise, surprise. Um, uh, Everybody got puckered up and decided we got to solve this. And they started talking seriously, and they talked through the weekend. And the partnership excuse me, the lawsuit was dismissed and sealed at the request of the person who filed it on Monday morning, and the terms of the deal were accepted. And so it's the kind of thing that had they, and I don't want to say one side or another was at fault, because they were negotiating, and each side wanted more or wanted less, however, whatever your perspective is, and they just couldn't quite get there. And the guy got honked off, and was working with his lawyers all along, and they filed a lawsuit. And well, that got things started. In the meantime, they called us and said, "We're expecting media coverage over this, and we're going to need your help." And so we helped prepare them, and interacted with media a little bit on their behalf. It ended up being a small story that was rather unremarkable and uninteresting, but it's a good example of the smoldering, pesky issue that because it was left, kind of, through inaction or through lack of attention, it bubbled up, and all of a sudden we were on the move. So, all right, some examples of crisis. I think Tammy's going to walk us through these.
Yep. So a lot of these, excuse me, I'm sure that you can think about, and really as Nick said a little bit earlier, it's the stuff that keeps you up at night, the thing that's in the back of your head that you're, wondering, could it happen to us, or it's something you've been dealing with. But obviously natural disasters, workplace accidents or incidents, if one of your locations is closing, or a whole program is closing, and now you've got displaced clients and or staff, anything that is a threat to public safety, malfeasance or misfeasance. Obviously, we have to throw in workplace sexual harassment or abuse is always a possibility. Depending on the company, something like a whistleblower, accusation, labor disputes. Flipping to the next page, obviously in this digital age that we live in, there can be people outside of the organization that are attacking you for whether it's real or perceived, and it's bubbling up on social media. Obviously, investigative journalism, we get a lot of calls from, I just got a call from the I team and I'm not sure how to respond. So that it's always a possibility. Data breach, obviously, those happen with regularity. How do you prepare for that? Product and food recalls, reorganizations, mergers and acquisitions, and then all of the other things that you think about at night that are specific to your industry, that again, it's the stuff that keeps you up at night.
And we're going to talk a little bit about some examples, some things that happen, but being prepared in advance, and we're going to talk through this as well, is really the most important thing. We have, I don't know how many we have now, but we have crisis communications plans in process for probably 4 or 5 clients at this particular time. And we can talk a little bit about that. But a few recent examples, and these guys, they should be familiar to you. Cracker Barrel would be an example of what I would call the smoldering issues. They were working on that for probably 2 years, redoing all of their stores and then redoing their brand mark. And I think if anybody was watching, they understood how that went. It wasn't well received. It probably got the messaging got absconded by other players in the media and social media world, and then the company after probably spending many, many hundreds of thousands of dollars on the redo of their brand mark. And then they were ready to go to market, and in some places had gone to market. So advertising costs and signage in stores and all of that. The Coldplay concert, that's a quick one that gets thrown at a company. You guys may remember that, where I think it was the CEO, maybe the president and the VP of HR were enjoying their time at a Coldplay concert until they saw themselves on the Kiss Cam on the big screen, and that went hard and fast quickly. Radioactive shrimp at Costco, um, dealing with food issues and food contamination issues. Most companies that are manufacturers of any kind of food product have good systems and processes in place. We were involved with one such company, and it was about every other week that in one of their manufacturing facilities somewhere in the country, someone did something wrong, and it ended up in some product being contaminated. And then the FDA gets involved, and and then you're off to the races. The Cincinnati police chief up in the upper right-hand corner, that's really just a visual reference of, if you remember the fight that was on 4th Street in downtown Cincinnati several months ago, that immediately took on political and racial overtones. That's another good example of something going from zero to 60 very quickly. And then Capital One, and you could pick the company, but I threw them on there just because they were involved in a very large data breach and very highly regulated industry. They were communicating with all of their customers, and I'm sure that they had lots of preparation for that. Anybody else have any examples that they can think of in the past several months that you're like, oh God, if that happened to my company, am I ready? Um, can anybody join in on that?
I was just thinking of the government shutdown was a big thing, but I know that's not business.
Well, it is business, and in fairness, a number of our client relationships are public sector organizations, and and boy, if you think about the government shutdown, that just kind of cascades into industry after industry. Because if the inspectors aren't on the job and they can't show up at the job site to put the stamp on the product that's going out the back door, you've got a crisis. And so there's all kinds of examples of where that would impact organizations in the private sector. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what is really the most important thing with regard to and crisis crisis communications and issues management is being prepared.
Hey,
And
Nick,
there,
really quickly before we
yeah,
move on,
sure.
there was a question from Mark about the 4th Street incident.
Yeah, Mark. Did he put it in?
Did Veer have anything to do with any side of the 4th Street brawl?
Oh, no, not at all. We weren't involved at all. Well, let me think about that. We do have one ongoing client, um, that is a nonprofit organization, and we did consult with them for just a bit, but they were very deeply involved, um, and they're kind of in the convention and visitor bureau industry, and in that the travel and tourism industry, and we did work with them to message about their organization, and their objective was not to get pulled into the full-fledged political fight, but to make sure that their core constituency, the people that matter most to them and their business being successful, that they heard their perspective and understood what they were doing to address the negative publicity that was being thrown all over the city of Cincinnati and leadership, especially in the downtown area.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Sorry, we didn't, I missed that. So, all right. So planning, let's just talk about advanced planning. Tammy, you
Yeah.
want to take this?
Yep. So again, once you've sort of thought about what are the things that keep you up at night, and that could potentially impact or disrupt your business, you want to start planning for that, right? So identify who internally, who would you leverage externally, but who would make up your crisis team. And, really like put all of those people on paper, their name, their role, their contact information. So all of that is easily accessible. And then you want to, as a team, really start thinking through again, okay, these are the four things that either have happened to a company similar to us, or that I think about when I wake up in the middle of the night, or that have we've sort of been dealing with ongoing. So these are the scenarios that I think where we have vulnerability, and really um, build out those scenarios. So what are the exact details of that scenario? What could potentially happen? And then you start developing materials specific to each of those scenarios. So you're going to want to identify who are the most important stakeholders that you need to communicate with in the event of a crisis. Who's first, second, third? Is it, employees? We always recommend employees are one of your top audiences, but, is it your board of directors? Is it the media? Like, what is that list of cascading stakeholders, and how will you plan to communicate with them? Is it through a text? Is it an email message to employees? Is it I'm going to try to hold a press conference and talk to all the media at once so I don't have to take individual calls? Think through to your protocols and procedures. So things like if a reporter walks in the door, who is the frontline person who could potentially be intercepted by that reporter? Does that frontline person know their role in this situation, which is probably you're not answering questions for the media, but you're passing it along to the person on the crisis team that's been identified as the one who's triaging those requests. Same thing with things like social media. If you start seeing comments on social media, does your team know, or what's your policy really? Do you allow your team to engage and respond to comments that they might see about your company on social media, or do they not? Again, so then thinking through, okay, so what next bullet point messaging strategy development? How do you want to communicate about whatever the issue is? And again, what are the channels that you're going to use? Start building out key messages and that kind of thing. Same thing again, social media policy development goes along with the communication protocols and procedures, but really make sure you have policies and best practices identified about how do you use social media? How do people respond to the media? If you had an internal meeting, do you make it clear that people should leave there and not speak about it? Or is that an unknown expectation, and the message may get out to the public more quickly than you wanted it to. So these are the things that you spend a lot of time sitting down and planning in advance and starting to build messaging against.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in the advanced planning, and Tammy touched on this. You think about some scenarios in advance, the things that keep you awake at night and all of that. And and you can develop a whole crisis plan around, 3, 4, 5 scenarios. None of them will be exactly like what actually happens. I mean, maybe if you're lucky, you will. It'll be that exact thing. But more importantly, what you will have done is you will have created some team experiences, created some team muscle memory. You will have drafted things that now you don't have to start from scratch. All you're going to do is tweak the draft media release, the draft message to your customers, the draft message to your bank, to whatever that messaging is, and having that done in some version in advance, so that all you're really doing is tweaking it, is so much better and so much more important than trying to start from scratch to get something put together that then the lawyers are satisfied with, and everyone in the hierarchy of the company signs off on, and then all of a sudden now you've missed a couple of news cycles, and or your employees are questioning you on day 2 or day 3, and you haven't been as responsive as they would have hoped or they would have planned. All right, Tammy, here we go.
Okay. So then once you've done your advanced planning, you want to practice it, right? So we do a lot of media training. I recommend it for everybody. It doesn't matter how comfortable you are with the media. A crisis situation is different than the everyday positive interview where you're having an event or you're talking about a new program or service that you're debuting. You really do need to practice for a crisis scenario, and you would you would do the training as if it's, when we do it, it's like we're pretending to be reporters. We have very well outlined questions, and we're trying to poke at you and antagonize you, or sit quietly and just stare at you, hoping that you'll fill in the blanks. It's just very different than your regular, any typical media relations that you might be familiar with. So, media training can be one-on-one. It can be a group training. It could be the whole crisis communications team. It could be all of your leadership team. But really, what you're going to do is sit and go through those scenarios that you've already developed and identify, maybe there's one spokesperson, maybe there's more than that. And you're sitting there and you have the scenario as the setup. Okay, it's a fire at our plant, and media is on site and go. And you'll walk through those key messages that you've already developed. Sometimes exercises are much bigger than just a person or a small group of people. Sometimes they involve first responders. If it's when I was at Cincinnati Children's, obviously it's a hospital. There's a lot of things that can happen. Active shooter drills that schools do, anything that can give you the most realistic scenario so that how did I respond? You have the chance to evaluate how did the team do, and then go back and decide what would we modify if we needed to. Nick, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I don't think so. I think you've that was a great
Okay.
job covering that.
Okay, so then response. Let's say it's happened. Okay, you're in the middle of dealing with something now. You've done your advanced prep, you've done your training. Now you need to put it all into action. So think through things like, do you want your entire crisis team in one location? Or if you're a business with multiple locations, is your crisis team distributed across different locations? It really depends on your company and how you work best to decide what works. Do you have an outside counsel that you need to make sure is on site, or can you deal with them over email or whatever? Make sure, now that you're in the middle of a crisis and you've already identified your spokesperson, before they talk to media or respond to a question, make sure that you're sitting down in the moment and practicing those key messages again. You may already know what their exact questions are. You may not, but you have planned for this. So now it's time to put all that in action, pull out those key messages, modify them for the actual event that has happened. Because, like Nick said, you can get close, but it's not going to be the exact scenario that you may be presented with. think through again, what is our messaging strategy? Who are we talking to first, second, third? How are we going to communicate with them? Is it an email? Is it a text? Is it we need to pull everybody together for a quick meeting? And then you're actually developing all of those messages, again, specific to this particular event, your internal and external communications. A lot of people focus specifically on external. I got to respond to the media, and for people, oftentimes internal kind of gets left behind. They're really your most important audience. You got to talk to them first. They're your biggest ambassadors. Don't forget the internal audience. So to like modify those communications so they're specific for the moment, and start disseminating those communications. And then really it's important as well, make sure, and you don't have to respond to everything, but make sure that you have somebody that is constantly monitoring media and social media. You will already have decided how do we want to respond to messages that we're getting on social. Social, you have to cast a pretty broad net. Remember that it could be somebody on their own personal Facebook page could be talking about you. They could be messaging you or leaving comments on your organization's social media channels, or it could be showing up on a news channel. And it's a article from the Inquirer that's reposted, but now there's 100 comments under it. So you don't have to respond to all those, but you should be aware of the general public sentiment so that it helps you refine your ongoing communications as you get 1 day, 2 day out from something. Excuse me.
Oh.
Any questions about what we just covered, advanced planning, training, response?
I'm not
Okay.
seeing any questions, right? Does someone have a question?
Well, we'll just keep going, and if somebody has a question, then of course just interrupt.
Okay.
So this is basically what we've just talked about. This is a little process wheel that you can see. The overall goal is to preserve and protect your brand, your reputation. Everything starts with understanding exactly what has happened. You don't know how often the input to senior management, especially in larger companies, can change over time because people were excited. They didn't get the full brief of what actually happened. And that happens in moments of excitement. Identifying the target audiences. Those are the people that matter most to you. That's all work that should be done in advance. And so you've got it there. You've got the list right in front of you. You've got the email addresses. You've got the phone numbers. You've decided who you're going to call versus who you can send an email to versus who you're going to have to write a note to. Understanding what it is you're going to say. What does that key audience need to hear from you? Who's going to tell them? Who's it coming from? Is this coming from the CEO, the board chair, from somebody else within the company? How are you going, as Tammy talked about before, how do you communicate with those people? Do you do it through social media? Is it through email? Is it a phone call? Is it a letter? Deciding all of those things in advance. What do you need to send to them? This is the materials development. And that, of course, that all needs to be reviewed and approved and before it's disseminated. And then it's important to have eyes and ears in the community, in the neighborhood, all around, to find out, do we need to adjust any of our messages? Is there anything else that we need to change? And then you adjust in real time, and then you just go through the wheel again. So that's how that's in essence the process that is involved in crisis communications. Most importantly, don't make it worse. And this is often the situation we find ourselves in. If you understand the situation well, and you got the right people at the table, and you know what the lines of communications are, and that they're open and active, and that you follow your operating procedures, obviously within your company to protect life, safety, and security. You involve law enforcement or first responders when necessary, and then typically you have to engage legal counsel. Just a kind of rule of thumb on knowing when to engage. We recommend absolutely do engage if there's a connection or relevance to your organizations. Did it happen at your facility with your product or the service you provide? Does it involve your employees or contractors? Is involvement direct or indirect? And does it affect your key stakeholders and their relationship to you? We generally recommend to not engage in divisive political issues or controversial headlines if you and those who matter most to you are not directly involved. You might inadvertently alienate key audiences or others by taking a stance on an issue that really is not of direct consequence to your company, to your organization. Look, these are basic rules of thumb, and they require cool heads in the midst of a challenging situation to make these kinds of decisions and assessments. And then finally, and this of course is in the spirit of the holiday, yes, it will happen. That thing that you fear most, that you wish doesn't happen, or you wonder if you're prepared. If it does happen, yes, it will. So listen to Russell from the movie Up. Be prepared. Business disruptions can and do happen every day. Best-in-class companies are prepared, practiced, and pragmatic. Be ready to apply your prep to virtually any situation you can confront. And as we said, and in the spirit of the Scouts, be prepared. And that is our presentation for the day. Jason, we are happy to take questions or to talk a little bit further if anybody has any questions or needs clarifications.
I'm looking on the screen. I know that I have a question. This is, I feel like a crisis that could be maybe not immediate, but maybe kind of developed. Sometimes we see businesses, like you were saying, that will put maybe political views on their business page, and a lot of their customers I don't think they realize it can be a crisis to their business, because it kind of drives some of the traffic away, and people are just coming to them really for their food or for their clothing. And so how would you kind of navigate maybe someone who's putting a little too much personality on their business page?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, and as a country, we're very divided right now, and we know that there's kind of intensity around virtually any or every issue. We would, look, if it's a small company, a CEO owner, and that CEO has strong political perspectives, and that he or she believes that that's a part of the culture of their company, then it would be in keeping for them to engage in the public discussion about complex and sometimes confusing issues. We would generally recommend that the best action to take is to not throw yourself in the middle of that discussion or that debate, because it doesn't directly relate to the business that you're in. But we'll gladly admit that this is a time in American history. We've had other times like this in American history where there's intensity on all sides of an issue, and people are emotionally connected and emotionally engaged to it, and so it's hard to say. The only way to do it is to not get engaged in the discussion, but generally that's what we would say, is to stay out of that divisive public discussion. And for our business, we don't have Republican clients or Democratic clients. We just have clients, and we provide the best advice and counsel that we can.
I love that. We have a few more people. Thank you for that, Nick. We have a few more people who have written in some questions. Cindy Keitel said, Nick, Tammy, what would you have done differently or recommended if you had been advising the Coldplay couple?
I think that was definitely a response-fueled crisis, right?
Yeah.
Also, Nick, could you stop sharing so that we can see
Oh,
everybody?
sure. Yeah. Good. Thanks,
Cindy, it's hard because it's in the moment, right? And they see themselves and they're shocked, but their reaction is what caused the crisis. The fact that the guy's ducking down and the woman's covering her face. if none of that had happened, it would have been a blip in time and nobody would have paid attention. So I don't, in the moment, it's hard to say don't react because that would have been my recommendation. But then and then it kept growing from there, right? It had a life of its own, and neither one of them spoke out initially, and it's just so who knows what the story is. I don't know what the real story is, but um the reaction is what caused the crisis.
Yeah.
So Cindy, I don't even remember the name of their company. Does anybody remember the name of their company? I ideally for me, I would have loved if their company would have called us and said, "Here's what happened at the Coldplay concert last night. How do you advise that we communicate? What advice should we give to our CEO and VP of HR who are about to be discharged?" Um, and so yeah, it's hard. I mean, what advice would I have given? Listen to what your mother and father told you, and don't have an affair, and don't cheat on your spouse. That's what I would have told those two. So.
Thank you. We do have another question. This is from Mark D. Moats from the Fitness Center. He said, Nick, what is the most common mistake people and organizations make in attempting to publicly alleviate a crisis situation? And that kind of
It's
goes a little
it.
bit.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing that in every situation that they speak before they think. They react without a careful assessment of the entire situation, and they weren't prepared. So that's really the most common mistake. Yes, once they get into it, sometimes they say too much, and they think that every detail matters to those who are following this, and that's why having either pulling back yourself in quiet time and asking yourself, so is that really an important message to include in this discussion? Maybe we don't have to go down that path, or turn to outside counsel like us and say, do you think it's important that we talk about this, or this, or should we just stay focused on the incident at hand? So it's one, being unprepared, two, saying too much, possibly saying too little, but screwing up the initial communications, which will run, if indeed this ends up being a media related story. Many times they are not. I'll share with you, Mark, that our absolute best crisis intervention work never ends up in the media, never ends up being a complicated issue for the company to deal with, because they anticipated it in advance and communicated in advance, to ensure that that their most important audiences were prepared in the event it went public. One of the other tricks is that, I shouldn't say tricks. One of the other things that we recommend is when media calls, first of all, if they hear the words no comment, all they do is get fired up, and they know they got something going on, and they're going to try to keep someone on the phone or show up at your company and try to get more. Um, and having the ability to respond quickly to the media, even if you're really not saying much, but you're respecting the media's deadline-driven work environment, and while might not be saying much, they can check off the box and say, via company spokesperson, ABC Russell, the Eagle Scout, we learned that, and it's really pretty innocuous. But they showed as reporters that they reached out to that party, that they got a comment from that party, even if it was provided in writing, and it was just a one paragraph acknowledgement of what occurred. Safety and security of our employees is the number one issue that we address. We're cooperating with law enforcement, and stay tuned for any more if we make that additional information available. So I hope that answered it.
No, for sure. That's always been. It's funny sometimes when you do prepare, how often nothing comes of it, but at least you're ready.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes oversharing is definitely a bigger problem than undersharing.
Yeah, that's when you create the issue yourself, maybe.
Yep. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Mark.
We did get another question from Lisa Deaton of LD Images. As a micro business, we do not have a board. It's just us. What are some good rules of thumb for businesses besides not taking sides on social media and thinking every thought you have needs to be published? What things do really, Lisa, what was the last question? Sorry. What things do really small businesses need?
Yeah, what do you need to be aware of as a really small, like, we're just us. Like I'm not Channel 5 isn't coming to my house to do anything. So, but what are some things that really small businesses can just be mindful of so that, you don't run into issues with your clients, basically, because that's who I'm dealing with is just my clients.
So I would say, and Tammy, feel free to jump in. I would say, understand who your clients are and think as if you're them and what they need to hear from you, if anything at all. Um, and so that would be my best way to address it. Yeah. The two of you can consult with each other and talk to each other about, well, what do you think? And if I think Lisa, you said that's your husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I can only imagine if I sat down with my wife and tried to go through a crisis prep exercise where that might go. But good luck to you and the two of you in trying to do that. But I would
Actually,
say,
he's pretty good. I'm way more reactive than he is.
well, you know your customers. And I would tell you for the most part, you know your customers and what do your customers want to hear from you or need to hear from you. And if you really don't think it's none of their effing business and this is just the thing you're working on, then deal with that accordingly.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is just think about how you show up, on your website, on social media, or in person. And um, so I'm going to use a reference that a lot of people probably know, Penzeys Spices. They're very vocal about their political stance and their stance on humanity, knowing that it will cost them customers. They are a much larger company, right? But to some degree, that helps pull people to them, while others may be like, yeah, that's too much for me. So in some, if your customers are really aligned to how you think and feel, and that's part of your brand identity, then talk about it. But if you feel like my personal view, probably, I want to pull from a broad spectrum of people, I probably shouldn't communicate my personal view. It really depends on, what makes the most sense for your business and your customers. But just think about, how do you show up publicly?
Yeah, that's good. My rule of thumb is keep politics out of it because
Yeah.
And I would say for most businesses that's the case, but there are other businesses, and we all know who they are, or we can name some that they believe very strongly that politics should be a part of their business. And
and I would say they can afford that. As
Sure.
Tammy
Yeah.
said, they can afford that.
Yeah,
Most small businesses cannot afford that.
right.
They cannot afford to alienate a whole group of people
Yeah.
Yep.
simply because my viewpoint might be different from theirs.
Yes.
But
And I like your shirt.
thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions?
I do have something on, you had mentioned the Cracker Barrel logo. I notice a lot of restaurants, they do the rebranding thing. Arby's years ago, they got rid of that little cowboy hat from their logo. I think Long John Silver's is now changing their logo from fish to a chicken to advertise their chicken. Those seem to be cases of intentional crisis promotion, I guess, or an uproar among their fans. Uh, how long do you think that type of crisis would last with those companies that are intentionally changing their branding?
So can I jump in here, Nick?
Go, Tammy, go.
So I don't know specifically about like a Cracker Barrel, but um So I said earlier that I was at Children's for 15 years. And while I was there, I was charged with leading the rebranding effort. So it went from what was, a beloved girl and boy figure in blue and white to something that was completely different. Cincinnati Children's, very well known in the region, a beloved brand. Um, Years. That's what I would tell you. It takes years, one, to make that change and to roll over. But when you have an entire tri-state region that really knows the brand well and loves it, and you have 15,000 employees, and we had 15 locations around Greater Cincinnati, not around the country, but around Greater Cincinnati. I think I did that work in 2016 and it's still not fully changed. So it takes time, and that acceptance of people takes a lot of time. You just have to kind of say like, well, like we feel good about this. We did all the market research. We're moving forward with it, and we're just going to kind of plod our way through it, and eventually this is who we are, and people will make the change or they won't. But it takes forever.
Lisa had, thank you for that, Tammy. Lisa had added on and, said, would it have been a right move for Cracker Barrel to basically go back to their original logo after all the work they had done and noticing the uproar?
So, first of all, we don't know the insides of everything that they went through. Here's my guess is that leadership of the company decided it was time to, quote, modernize their brand. And companies go through that. And my guess is they hired people to help them through that process. And they probably did not test it enough with a customer base or a group of people that represented a customer base. But when things get so bad that what in essence is an operational decision finds its way into a large board of trustees, and the board of trustees ends up making the decision, I would tell you that probably the only decision they could make at that point was to get out of the news and get back to what they had as their logo. I'm quite sure that when they created the new logo, they were doing it for all kinds of reasons, but it was not to discharge their base and their core customer. It was probably to appear more modern, to appear, and if you remember, they were doing it hand in hand with upgrades to their country stores and to their restaurants and to their menu. And it was kind of a complete makeover. And my guess is they decided at the end of the day, because they continued to redo their stores and to update their menu, is that they decided, okay, let's just set that aside. It's become a distraction to who we are and what we do. They had already invested, I'm sure, hundreds of millions of dollars in the redo of their stores, of their restaurants and stores. And so my short answer would be they made they backed themselves into a corner and then made the only decision they could make to end the public discussion. And at some point they'll decide whether or not they want to complete this 2025 company transition, and maybe they'll complete it in 27 or 28 or whenever, and come back out with the new logo. Or maybe they'll just say, yeah, let's call me dumb once, but not twice. I'm not going to mess with it. So anyway, that's my gut reaction.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
A lot of great questions. We have time for maybe one more question. Anyone else have a question? I'm not seeing anything on the Zoom. So once again, reminder, I'm going to be sending out a recap with the presentation that Nick and Tammy put together. Do you mind if I also include your email addresses as well?
Sure. Sure, that's fine. Great.
Awesome. Cool, cool, cool. I'm also going to be including our chamber calendar. Nick and Tammy, I just want to thank you guys for being here today and letting us in on something that, like you said, is inevitable. Things will happen regardless industry. So this was very insightful conversation to be part of. If you guys are interested in, being more connected with the Chamber of Commerce, Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, head to our website, which is hamilton-ohio.com. Head to our chamber calendar. We have some upcoming events. Cindy Keidel, who is on the call today, she has a weekly session on Wednesdays. Build a smarter, more profitable business. You can register through our website with Cindy. She's offering a nice special for all chamber members. We also have a ribbon cutting coming up with Retreat Mobile IV Hydration Integrative Well Care on October 20th. Feel free to join us for that. October 21st, we have Networking Leads, which is at lunchtime at Dildinker's Pickleball Lodge. On October 28th, we have another coffee and conversation with Yvonne Vanneber of Navigating Fire and Water Damage, which kind of, I think, is an extension of this, not through media, but just kind of physical property. Later that day, we also have a business after hours on October 28th, networking at Miami Hamilton with Fairfield Chamber. So if you would like to get more involved, head to our website. We would love to see you guys there. Feel free to ask us any questions, say hello. We will see you then. Everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Nick and Tammy.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.